Greetings, and here we are on Monday, January 12th, and you probably already knew this. In fact, at this point, it's Monday night, so hope you enjoyed your 2 hour delay. I know I did. But because of that, we didn't have our class time as usually scheduled. And we need to move forward because this is a 5 week class. So I have a series of screencast tutorials that will guide you through the content that we would have covered in that 50-minute class session. So I will get into the online content, but for now, I'm actually going to open with your assignments for Wednesday because I figure that if nothing else, if you just watch this first video, you'll at least know what you need to do before you arrive in class on Wednesday. So I will say this: I hope that you're watching this, and if you are, you're already aware that you have assignments due. But I'll just put this out there. Class goes on, even though we had a 2 hour delay and class had been canceled for Mother Nature. There are still things that are due, and you have known that they're due for Wednesday. So that will not be a valid excuse for you or for others in the class come Wednesday morning. Okay, so that being said, what are you doing? Well, one thing that I'll mention is that you should still be making progress toward that environmental health science capstone story. Starting on Wednesday, I may have a few opening announcements to begin class, but then largely what we'll do are those memoranda discussions, one-on-one consultations with me, and then I'll have some activities in class to keep everybody busy while I meet with folks up front. Now, for Wednesday's class, one thing that you need to do is the news story evaluation. So what is this? I mentioned it audibly in class on Friday, right at the tail end, but this will be a much more thorough explanation. So the instructions just say to pick one newspaper, preferably a story on the front page or the front section, and I want the original clipping. So that's going to be key because I need to see the story that I'm asking you to evaluate. So the publication can be local or national, I don't mind, but I would like you to actually get into an actual newspaper, nothing online. And there's a reason for that, because there's certain things that I want you to look for as you evaluate it. And so what are those things? Here it is. This is what you need to answer as we move forward into tomorrow and then before we get to class on Wednesday. So news characteristics or values, we talked about that on Friday. The lead, we did talk about the types of leads, and then in a moment, in probably a subsequent video, if not this one, I'll talk about some examples of those leads. And then attribution, we'll talk a little bit more about that in these videos that will make up for Monday's missed class. And then kickers, and then just in general what you like and what you might change, sort of a critical eye for this composition, whichever story that you choose. So this is something that I will expect to see Wednesday morning. The other assignment is this drafting exercise. So we'll open that up and show you what that one's about. This is just getting you ready for writing. So I want you to use copy edit symbols per AP style. One of your reading assignments last week was to look at the editing symbols that are utilized in AP style, because that is how I will edit your writing assignments for future exercises. So I've got a couple examples here where I want you to omit any sexist language or comments that are unnecessary to the root of the sentence. Then you're also going to come down here and you'll just omit opinionated words and phrases in an effort to remove any reporter bias that you detect. I want you to rewrite some sentences where you will eliminate the use of nouns as verbs, a common mistake in contemporary journalistic writing. And then I want you to be a little bit creative on choosing other verbs that could be more descriptive in this section. And then finally, I just have you rewrite these sentences using stronger verbs, but also trying to write in a more succinct, active style voice. And that active style is subject first, then the verb, then the direct object as applicable. So this drafting exercise, this is going to set you up for the writing assignments that will follow. And if, I think I'm giving you one this week. If not, then definitely next week. So that's what you're doing for Wednesday's class. And then, well, if you scroll down in Blackboard, you know that we have some in-class exercises coming up because of those consultations. Okay, so that's what you're doing. If nothing else, the first 5 minutes of this video should be most helpful, at least alerting you to those assignments. Now, when we get into the content, we've gone through some of this. I think where we left off is right here. So hard summary and delayed identification lead examples. So what I wanted to do was go in, and if we had had class, this is what I probably would have opened with. I would have had us get into Blackboard, take a look at these, and analyze them. Well, that didn't work out, so here I am. I'm going to point out to you things that I would have drawn your attention to in class. These were examples that I had pulled out once upon a time that I thought were good examples of those leads that we discussed on Friday. So, for example, you have your headline up here. Here's your subhead. This is called a byline. Byline meaning by said author. And then here's the introduction to the story. So, I'll read this one aloud and go through it step by step, but I probably won't do this with all of these on this in this document. But you can. You can go through and look at these and make sure that you understand this concept. So for this one, a West Jordan motorcyclist charged with negligent homicide after his passenger was killed in a collision with another motorcycle was sentenced Tuesday on lesser charges. Okay, so which type of lead is this? Is this your hard summary lead, or is it the delayed identification lead that we talked about? Which one? Well, remember I said we want to always start these leads with who did what, then the when, then the where, then the why as applicable to the storyline. So if you read this, it says a West Jordan motorcyclist. That's a descriptor. That's not a name. So that's your cue that this is a delayed identification lead. And then, lo and behold, in that second paragraph, there's the name. Brian Martinez, age 20, pleaded guilty in 3rd District Court to 3 Class C misdemeanor or traffic violations, and so on and so forth. So there it is. In the very first paragraph, the opening lead, a West Jordan motorcyclist. And West Jordan is a suburb of Salt Lake City. So that's where that is in reference to. A West Jordan motorcyclist charged. Who did what? Motorist charged. There it is. Subject verb. With negligent homicide after his passenger was killed in a collision with another motorcycle, was sentenced Tuesday on lesser charges. So, think about it when you look at this lead, just this first paragraph. You've got your who and what happened, okay, but you also have a when in there, and you also have a where, and the where is actually a part of the who because it's a delayed identification right there. So, you've got a couple of those 5 W's and H present in this lead. And so, if you were to go on through this, you could take a look and see about instances of attribution. And that's going to be something that, I'm going to want you to do in that news story evaluation. You're going to need to look through there and look at instances where you see said or explained, direct quotes, but also paraphrases. So right away we see over here that here's a direct quote. Well, it's not highlighting the way I wanted it to, but it's right here in this paragraph. It was a terrible accident with terrible consequences. Bugden said Tuesday. Okay, obviously that's attribution, so that's good. But take a look at this very last paragraph. Alicia Cook, spokeswoman for the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office, said the case was pleaded down. Notice, Alicia Cook said. No quotes, but there's still evidence that somebody said something. That's your cue that you have a paraphrase. So if you're not familiar with that vernacular, you have a direct quote here, direct quote as the name denotes because you have the presence of quotation marks indicating that was literally verbatim what was said. And then you also have a paraphrase where apparently the spokeswoman said something to this effect, but it probably wasn't the exact words stated in this story. So when I say that, in that news story evaluation that you need to look for instances of evaluation, you need to look not just for direct quotes and for quotation marks. To do that will get you part of the way there, but there may be other instances of attribution that aren't as clearly obvious. So just pay attention to that as you go through it. So let's take a look at this next one. So here's your headline, Obama linking autos. Here's your subhead, the byline. It's 2 writers, and this one's actually picked up from the Associated Press wire right there. But nevertheless, here we go. President Barack Obama plans to propose the first ever national emission limits for cars and trucks, as well as average mileage requirements of 35.5 miles per gallon by 2016. So right there, who did what? President Barack Obama plans. There you have a name. There you have President Barack Obama and then a verb, plans. So this is your hard summary lead where the name is identified right at the outset, right at the beginning. So if this were a story that you picked, for example, for that exercise, you'd go through and look for instances of attribution there. A couple of other ones that I squeezed onto this page. We'll go over here to this one. Man shot on I-15 dies. I-15 is one of two interstates that intersects Salt Lake City, the other being I-80. So here it is. The victim of a shooting on Interstate 15 died Thursday after 6 nights in the hospital. So, again, take a look at this lead. 2 words, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 words in this lead. Okay, the victim, no name, so there's your cue, it's delayed identification. The victim of a shooting on Interstate 15 died. Victim died. Who did what? Now, they throw in a couple of other details there. So, where in the hospital, when, Thursday, whatever that's in reference to, whatever date. And then why did the person die? Because of a shooting on the interstate. So when you look at that, you have who and what happened, victim died, when, on Thursday, where in the hospital, and why. You've got, there we go, five W's right there in 16 words. That is an effective, efficient lead. That's kind of what we're talking about for the type of news writing that I'm going to want you to do in some of your forthcoming assignments in the class. So let's see here. There's some other ones. I'll do the principal forces kilt-wearing student to change. So here we go. A kilt-wearing middle school student will receive an apology from a principal who said the boy could be mistaken for a cross-dresser. Okay, here we go again. Kilt-wearing middle school student. It's a delayed identification lead. It's just one big descriptor. And then, what's happening? Well, this student is going to receive an apology, from whom? A principal. And why? Well, because the principal said, that the kid could be mistaken for a cross-dresser. So, take a look at these examples. They should help you differentiate between the types of leads. And then also prep you well for that exercise that you need to do for Wednesday. So, when we're talking about attribution too, there's a couple of things I think you need to know. And obviously, I talked about direct quotes and paraphrases, and that's probably all I'll do right there in terms of types of attribution, how we go about representing others' words in our writing. But there's also levels of attribution, and this document that you see before you, this will be important in terms of perhaps your interviews. Maybe not for this class, but just in general, your writing career, you're going to need to know this kind of stuff. So, right away, people usually understand on the record. And people, we think, understand off the record, but that's not necessarily the case. And in some cases, you may not completely understand. In fact, I would venture that most of you didn't realize that there's 4 different levels of attribution in which you can interview somebody. So we'll start with the one everybody knows. On the record means that everything that the source says can be published and quoted directly, as underlined here. And the source may be fully identified by name and title. So on the record means full disclosure. I can quote you, I can paraphrase you if I choose, I can identify you by your name, by your title. It's all fair game, basically. Now, on the complete opposite end of that, we'll go down here, off the record. Okay, in this case, a source's information cannot be used, and it cannot be used in any way. So this is more or less just a conversation. This is somebody who maybe can give you information about a story that you wish to pursue, but to identify them could cost them their job, or, not to be melodramatic, but in some severe cases, maybe their life. But they're still willing to talk to you and give you information, give you leads, give you something to build off of. But to identify them would be very problematic. And so if we go off the record, no note-taking, no quoting, no identifying whatsoever. We're just talking, and you're just giving me information. Okay, so I'll start the second part of this screencast instruction with the 2 middle levels of attribution. But for now, I got to close out of this one because I'm about to hit 15 minutes.